the gatekeeping that involved, either explicitly through the Democratic Party saying, no, you're not allowed on the ballot, or by putting these requirements that are just unattainable to most people unless you come with a full set of staff, which requires money, which requires you becoming corrupt to attain that.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
This is Tina-Desiree Berg reporting for Status Coup News. We are at the Bernie Sanders AOC Fight the Oligarchy tour. I'm going to interview you. Okay, so I'm going to have you introduce yourself. I know you ran for president in the last primary. Correct. Tell us a little bit about why you did that, your full name, all that stuff.
Yeah, so my name is Gabriel Cornejo. I'm from Southern California, but I reside here in Las Vegas. And I jumped in the presidential race because I knew that the country was looking for somebody not named Biden or Trump. That's step one. But I also knew that, like Bernie's been espousing, that we were headed towards this wealth gap widening under both tutelages of Biden or Trump, or Harris in that case, right? And so I jumped into the race, got on 8 ballots, saw the Democratic Party block all of us presidential candidates from Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee, right? Because we're actively advocating for you, the average American, because you're like me.
So let me ask you this. I want to talk about that. So the primary, they didn't really run a real primary, right? They sort of did. And so what actively did they do to stop candidates from getting on the ballots in various states?
Sure. So if you recall, during the primary in Florida, they did not allow any of our signatures, even though we were registered with the Secretary of State of Florida, to be accepted, because the party has control over who gets to be on the ballots. In certain states, the Secretary of State, like in Massachusetts, got to determine who gets to be on the ballot. And I'm not a millionaire, so they allowed Dean Phillips and they allowed Marianne Williamson, but everybody else was not allowed on.
Okay, what was the basis for that? Was it you had to pay a certain amount of money, get a certain amount of signatures? Like, what was their rationale, do you know?
So the Democratic Party would argue that in those states in particular, they had control. They said either we pick who gets to be on the ballot, which is why Biden was on the ballot without collecting signatures, or everybody else, you go collect signatures. Okay. Well, you know, that's an expense that the average American can't bear and cannot execute on when all of these deadlines are coming up at the same time. As I started with my first ballot access here in Nevada, and then I went right away to Georgia to try to get on the ballot there and collect signatures. But, you know, one person trying to make that happen, not possible. So that's why it's like the gatekeeping that involved, either explicitly through the Democratic Party saying, no, you're not allowed on the ballot, or by putting these requirements that are just unattainable to most people unless you come with a full set of staff, which requires money, which requires you becoming corrupt to attain that. Yeah.
All right, let me ask you this. Do you think it's more difficult to get in the primary system for the Democrats in that capacity, or running on a third-party ticket? I mean, obviously it's not viable to win a presidential election that way, but there are arguments that can be made that that might be the better idea. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I was optimistic that in this particular election cycle that Kennedy was going to be able to accomplish that, right? And in fact,
okay, wait, why Kennedy over the others?
Well, it wasn't that I was in support of Kennedy, but because of the Kennedy name, right? Okay. And being able to pull in a billionaire as his vice president, that provides the resources to be able to overcome.
Other than the fact he had wacky ideas.
No, I'm not saying one way or the other, but I'm saying that he had the greatest opportunity because of the name recognition piece, plus having the financial resources to be able to accomplish those giant goals that are set in place to prohibit third-party candidates from getting on the ballots. Like, I helped produce the final presidential debates with Dr. Jill Stein from the Green Party, Chase Oliver from the Libertarian Party, and then Randall Terry from the Constitution Party. They all had their various challenges, but they were established minor parties, and they were able to get on ballots because their parties were able to get on the ballot.
Oh, I see. So they had the party mechanism behind them that was gathering signatures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Or the party themselves already had the mechanism to be on the ballot well in advance. For example, I just had a conversation with the Forward Party, who are already taking steps to be able to put candidates on the Forward Party in the midterm elections.
Okay, got you. So what are your thoughts now for where we are out in the country? I'd say we're having a mini constitutional crisis here. You know, Elon Musk is out there like just doing whatever he wants, basically. This morning, Donald Trump signed an executive order to just completely obliterate the Department of Education, which is illegal and unconstitutional, but he did it anyway. It wouldn't be the first EO that he has signed to that capacity. What do we do about this quagmire we're in?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been, and the reason why I jumped in the presidency is because I've anticipated this for a decade plus. I actually built a company to try to take on Amazon back in 2013, and I ran it for 7 years because I was concerned we were going to become the United States of America brought to you by Amazon.
Right.
Which is what we
Or as
become.
Jordan likes to say, the United Corporation of America, or what he says, yeah.
Yeah, right. So the oligarchs are taking over, right? We saw it now. It's out in the open. If Elon Musk can spend $250 million and now he's head, not head of Doge, it's very overt and it's in our face. So what can we collectively do? And part of the reason why I came here today is to coalesce all those fighters that are actually here to fight. Because from my perspective, going through the race for the presidency and seeing the Democratic Party basically rig the race for Biden and then rig and change the rules to prevent any challengers to Kamala Harris. These are actions of the wealthy that are entrenched in the establishment of the Democratic Party, still trying to retain that, which is why you're not seeing any fight from the Democratic leadership.
Okay.
Bernie Sanders, though, not of that same ilk, not being bought and paid for, I was hoping that we would get that coalition started and that message about what does this game plan look like. I know that I've got a game plan and I intend to present that to him, but this is where I think people are eager for those leaders to take charge and say, here's how we're going to push in the same direction.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for talking with us.
Of course, thank you.
That in the richest country in the history of the world, we demand and will achieve an economy and a government that works for all of us, not just the 1%. It seems to me that before we can effectively determine the best way forward, it's important to do what is very rarely done in Congress or in the corporate media. And that is to have a frank discussion about the economic and political realities facing our country. So let's do something really radical. You ready? Yeah. Let's tell the truth. In our country today, we have two very different Americas. In one of those Americas, the wealthiest people have never, ever in the history of our country had it so good. People on top are doing extraordinarily well today. We have more income and wealth inequality in our country than we have ever had. The three wealthiest people in America, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, Mr. Zuckerberg. You know those guys. Those three people alone own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million people. Three people, 170 million people. The top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. And CEOs of major corporations now make 300 times what their average workers make. But it's not just income and wealth inequality. Today we have more concentration of ownership than we have ever had. While the profits on Wall Street and corporate America saw a handful of giant corporations dominate sector after sector, whether it's agriculture, transportation, media, financial services, small number of very, very large international corporations dominate. And they charge us outrageously high prices for the products they sell us. If you could believe it, three Wall Street firms, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, combined are the major stockholders of 95% of American corporations. And let me say this, the 1% live completely and isolated lives from the rest of this country. They have no clue what is going on in the real world.